an artillery shot lands, it leaves a crater, and you can take a stick and stick into the crater, and you can measure where this was coming from. So this is how I seen that it wasn't coming from the side of the market. I'll get to that. So when did real military activity start that you could see or you could hear personally? Well, on the outskirts, it was a little earlier, but Horlovka is really big by size. It's even bigger than Donetsk. If you look at the map, the next closest towns to Horlovka, there actually is a part of Horlovka territory. So the first day that I remember that was real military activity was a bloody Sunday. That was the day when my great grandma was died, and it was one of the first or second rockets that hit near my great grandma's house, and the pieces from the rocket. And she was born in 1917. And when they brought her to the hospital, the doctor said that I can operate, but there's not a fact that she will survive or what will happen after the surgery. And there were many casualties during that time, and the doctors had to make a decision, who do they operate on first. So I, oh, 27th of July. So I wanted to get to that point about your great grandma because I've been watching you for a long time, and maybe you're gonna correct me, but to you this moment was a pivotal moment. First of all, I'm so sorry about your great grandma, but for you, was this a really pivotal moment in your life? Well, how should I say pivotal? A lot of people died that day. On that day, a wife of my friends died. He got shot, and his daughter was injured. And until now, they're having health problems. So I understood that people were dying for a long time, not in Horlovka, but they were dying. So of course, when you lose someone close to you, it's a tragedy. And this great grandma, as I told you before, she taught me how to read and write, and I stayed with her a lot. When my parents would leave somewhere and my dad would go for a long time, and so they used to leave me at my great grandma's. So I spent a lot of time with her. So of course it was a tragedy, but maybe that happens with time. But there's this feeling when you see a lot of death. I don't know how to. Well, you get numb to it. So I know that I've been to Horlovka not too long ago. It was on business and everything. I'm walking around and I hear like an artillery shot not too far away. So I automatically know that I have to find a spot to hide, hit the ground. So I found a spot to hide, and then I just get up on when it was done, and I kept walking. And when I came home finally, and I realized that I could have hit me, but now you treat it as different. It's always a tragedy when people die. But as I said about my great grandma, this person taught me so many things. She lived such a long life. She was born in 1917. Just if she would have lived a little longer, and, and I promise you, she would have lived a little longer. She would have been 100. And every year she would say, I, and like when I was 12, she always used to say, oh, like, I know for sure that this year God is going to take me. And the next year she would say the same thing. So then once one winter she fell, broke something. So my dad took her to the hospital, and the doctor's asking, "How old are you?" I don't remember how old she was, but she was like past 90 at that time. So he's a doctor's asking, "Where's your birth certificate?" And my grandma's like, "Birth certificate? What birth certificate? I don't know that I needed one." But yeah, she never went to the hospital. She was gardening, whenever I got came over there, she would make me work in the garden. So so she would definitely get to be 100. Again, I'm so sorry. The reason why I ask you if it was a pivotal moment, because as much as I understand from what I heard, after that, you started to do an investigation. So this is my question. Before that happened, you didn't know where these rockets were coming from and who was shooting. And I'm sorry if I'm bringing up bad memories. Oh, yeah, yeah, no. Look, we knew where these shots were coming from, but I had a friend. She's like all for Ukraine. So unlike all my other friends that were pro-Ukrainian and left, she left. Her parents took her away because her parents said, "We're not going to leave without you." So they left. And she lived somewhere. But then she gathered money, and she didn't get a job, but she got a volunteer. She started volunteering on the Ukrainian side to help our people that were coming from Donbass move to the Western Ukraine. So she's a Ukrainian patriot. And I understand her. She wants a whole Ukraine, one Ukraine, and then there's no problem. And she would tell us that these rockets was us shooting ourselves. And because these people were saying such things, that we were killing ourselves, and now my great grandma dies, my close person. I knew where it was coming, where these shots were coming from. But just to show it to someone, so 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 I took a phone and I was showing the orientation of where these shots were coming from, because when an artillery shot lands, it leaves a crater, and you can take a stick and stick into the crater, and you can measure where this was coming from. So this is how I seen that it wasn't coming from from the side of the market, meaning our side. So we came from the Ukrainian side. And a lot of people were telling me, look, you don't know where it's coming from. Well, that moment that you already knew, but at that moment, maybe you can remember, did you feel some sort of a hatred? towards the Ukrainian side? Well, not hatred, but anger. Anger, but not at Ukrainian people. Again, I had family members from my dad's side and my mom's side, my grandma, that lived on the Ukrainian controlled territory. And when the conflict already started, I used to go over there to the village. And when I talked to people over there, it was just adequate people, good people. Yes, some people actually knew what was going on, but other people said no, this is Donbass shooting at themselves, and it's all Russia started this whole thing. So again, if you look at the TV that they were watching, you would understand why they were saying those kind of things. And when I would go back to Donbass, I would tell people what was going on the other side. And how can I hate these people? What should I hate them for? Like really, for what? Most people, like I was talking about before, that was my fault. That a lot of people, the government is so that a lot of people come home and they're happy just to find a spot to sit. And some people even get a second job and a third job just to feed their family. So for them to devour any kind of information, they don't even have a wish. Like the only news that they know is what they hear, like, from somebody talking from like work or and when they come home, they put on some football or something and they just watch some football. And because, they have a lot of things to do, they have to spend some time with their family. So it's hard for me to blame people. Really. I really want this to be a big example to everyone, even at such a serious moment that personally touched you. You felt anger, but you didn't feel anger towards a Ukrainian or a Russian. You just felt anger. Why? Why was this happening? Even inside of you, nothing divided here for Ukrainians or Russians. No, no, no. There are Ukrainians, and then there are people that took arms. Well, those people, I don't wish them death. I want them to be prosecuted, and this is very important. If someone took in arms and went to voluntarily and went to kill someone, because I had a brother that worked, well, I won't get into that, but we heard that these people, these volunteers, they would send all kinds of goods from Donbass back home, back to wherever they're from, plus weapons too. Well, to those people, just they have to stand trial. But people that were drafted and were answering to commands, I have a split feeling because if they were answering to criminal command, I, I don't know. It's a mixed feeling. But then there are those that was just doing their job, because a lot of military men first they do their job and then they start asking questions, and maybe that's right. So military men that were military men just fulfilling commands but didn't fulfill criminal commands, I got no questions to them. But if there were military men and were fulfilling criminal commands that were shooting at civilians at civilian cities, those are criminals and they need to stand trial. I'll go to the side a little bit. Uh, what do you think helped you to stay, I don't know how to say it, like not to become hateful and to blame a certain side or a certain nationality? What helped you, if you could maybe advise someone? I don't know, maybe the way I was raised, that we were all brothers, man. Um, the day that the Horlivska Madonna happened, do you remember? Well, I remember. Of course, I remember. I wasn't there. I came outside that day. I took around, and it was horror. I never seen before then how artillery shots were landing at the city. And that day, I came out and I was walking around, and later I found out that my great grandma died. So basically, it was that day. Oh, was that day? I don't know. Yeah, it was Bloody Sunday. So the first artillery shot that landed on the square where that happened. So then it landed on the main street, Prospect of Liberty. Well, one of the most lively bus stops in the city, and that's where my friend and his wife with his kid got hit. And there was grandmas, babushkas sitting around selling apples and stuff, and one of the artillery shots landed there. So later on, I found out about the Horlivska Madonna. And what were the rumors when people found out about that there was this woman covering her children? The reason why I'm asking is at that moment, did people realize that my government came to kill us? Maybe people, well, yeah, maybe the population, I can't speak for everyone. But of course, when your own government comes to point their weapons toward you, and not only point their weapons but start shooting at you, well, first of all, now it's not your army, and second, it's not your government. What kind of government comes to kill its own people? Well, listen, I can't even imagine something like that. It's so scary. A person like me that's far from all of this, I'm just interested at those moments, especially when Horlivska Madonna happened. How did Horlivka as the city organized? Did you guys like put up barricades, or were weapons handed out? Like, how was that happening? Well, weapons, I don't know if they were hanging out, but I don't remember the dates. But at the entrance to the city, they had a like a block post. And first it was a civilian block post, but then it became military. So one day I came up to it, and no one really had weapons. They had like weapons with no real bullets. He had like a vest and a chromatic pistol. So we didn't have any weapons. So we would stop cars and we would just ask people if we could check their cars. And most of the time, when people would come through, they would say, "Of course, check us." And we would check cars, for weapons. And you could leave the city any way you want, but when you're entering, we're supposed to check your cars. And I remember one time when I went to check one car and I opened the glove box and I see a gun, so I don't know what to do. I forgot to mention, periodically policemen came to us in uniform and everything because they still had legitimate government force. So I asked the cop, like, can I check for weapons? So I check the glove box and it's a weapon. So I call over the cop, and the cop comes and he's looking at it, and we don't know if it was like a BB gun or a airsoft pistol, but we held the owner of the car until we can check him out. But we let him go eventually. We checked the gun and everything. So basically we were checking for weapons and for narcotics. At that time, all of the narcotics, all of the drugs disappeared from the city. Yeah, that's probably one plus that happened. Yeah, probably a plus happened. So later on at that block post, military men came with weapons. But when they came, I said, I have no business here no longer. So I never went back there. Well, because military men are military men, and I'm not one. A lot of people took up arms as rebels, a lot of guys did. And again, at that block post, first day, military men came, and this one older man was sitting there taking apart his automatic weapon. So I came up to him. I'm like, can I check like how you're doing it? Maybe it will serve me good one day. So he's showing me how he's taking apart the rifle, but he's looks like a ghost. So I'm asking him, did something happen? So he tells me a story. So some information came that somewhere the Ukrainian military was there. So either they were shooting or something was going on. And he says he went over there to check. And all these Ukrainian battalions, and I don't know what kind of weapons they had, but they were shooting at civilian points. And I came up, and this guy is telling me, he said, I came up to a young guy, and he's just this guy, what this older man, while telling me he has no face on him, like he looks baffled. And he's telling me, he's like, if NATO came to us, there was one thing, but when I see young kids, 18, 19, that are Slavic, that are our people dead, and that was horrific. Well, now on the Ukrainian side, a lot of people are talking about Hirkin and Slavyansk. You and Horlivka, did you guys hear this news, this rumor that Hirkin came with some people? Well, honestly, the first time I heard this last name was much, much later. Well, I knew that there was a Hirkin, but that he came from Russia, I only found out like recently, like years later. So so Hirkin came into Slaviansk with 52 people, and he came out of Slaviansk with like 1,000 people. And later, when I talked to one military guy, he's from Slaviansk, and I asked him, why did you go to join the military? And this guy, he looks, has a nice military uniform and medals all over. And I asked him, how did you join? And this guy says, from Slaviansk, I joined, to defend my land. But at those moments, did you guys hear news that in Slaviansk the government building was overtaken? I do remember that we had some kind of rumors, but I can't remember now. Like something was going on, there was all kinds of shootings and stuff. If I'm not mistaken, Ukraine brought heavy artillery up to Slaviansk, and I'm thinking to myself, how with heavy artillery they're gonna do what? Shoot at the city? And I couldn't believe it. Thought to myself, no one's ever gonna shoot at a city at Horlivka. And in my factory, if you would bomb this factory, it would be a global catastrophe. Just regular working people. Why would anyone shoot at them? Yeah, well, but they did shoot. I'm really sorry. I don't know. I'm sitting here hearing what you survived, and I have goosebumps. What's really interesting to me, okay, you guys already understood. You guys are defending yourself from Ukraine. Now your own formation. How was life happening at those moments? Do you keep going to work? Because now you understand. Now we're not part of Ukraine. We